Okay, woo, finally. All right, good morning, fellow classmates. My name is Heath, and I did my presentation on the Pallet Tiny House, and we'll be talking about that for a little bit today. So here we go. So with every project or build or whatever you're doing, there is needs and solutions that you need to find and obviously solve the problem to. So, what one of the needs would be is to obviously have shelter and food and water because that's human basic needs to survive, and to store human waste as well. And the solution to this would be to find a trailer, the pallets, and the roofing and insulation, all your materials that you'll have to use to build your tiny house with here. And so, where would you want to find these materials at? Specifically, the pallets would be your local hardware store. I know since I work at Lowe's, I do know we sell some pallets, but not all of them. You can go to a local business here in Asheville called the Mulch Lady, which you can buy like large amounts of pallets that they sell, or you can go online and you can look up at Strand's Pallet Service Inc., which are based out of Charlotte, and you can order new pallets. So if your pallets aren't looking at nice, you can order some from there, and they'll send you some nice looking ones as well. So there's multiple different types of pallets that you could choose from. But what I looked up would be the stringer pallet and the block pallet. And these pallets can weigh, they usually range from 33 to 50 pounds each. So, and here's a stringer pallet. It's built with some one bys on top, the top deck and the lower deck. And on the sides there, they got some 2x4s running across the two ends and then through the middle to keep the structure safe, and it can hold up to 2,500 pounds. And the block pallet here can hold up to 4,600 pounds. And as the picture shows, right where the stringers would be on the stringer pallet, but instead they got little blocks there to hold the pallet up and stuff. And this is the sturdiest one. And these two are the lightest pallets I've found because when you're like trying to pull your tiny house, weight is a factor, um, a huge factor in building your tiny house. So these are the two best pallets to use. So when using a pallet, the pallets to make the skeleton or the framework for your house here, um, you can use it and then have the insulation go behind it, and then you would cover the insulation with the plywood and the siding material that would go on the outside. Or you can have the pallet flipped on the inside out, if that makes sense, to have it more look like a rustic feel on the inside when you get done here. And your other materials that you would obviously need would be the wiring, piping, insulation, and screws, nails, and for the plywood to go on the exterior of the house to enclose the structure. And the insulation you use, the best one you use would be the wall for the walls is the R19. It's just a real good to just keep warmth in and stuff. And you could use R30 or 38 for like the roof and stuff. And there are four types of insulation, but I don't necessarily think foam board is a true insulation. It's more like an extra barrier to keep like wind from breaking through. But this is the foam board, which is one of those right here. Yeah. And then you have your bat insulation as well, which is your traditional form of insulation here, made out of fiberglass, and obviously insulating walls, attics, ceilings, and floors. Then your blow insulation here. Um, with this, you'll just need a process of filling in the studs, and you have to get a blower, obviously, to turn up the insulation, and just blow the insulation in the house, in the attic, or wherever you want to blow it at. And the last type of insulation is a spray foam insulation. This is an alternate to the traditional type of insulation. Um, it's more expensive, what I found, than any other types of insulation here. But there is a concern for health risk with this type because it does release chemicals after the insulation. So just if you choose to go down this path, just let it air out a little bit longer. This one. And then you have multiple types of roofs. So, but let's say if you want to, I don't know, have a deck on the top of your tiny house, then you want to use a flat roof. Or if you want to go green and catch rainwater or have solar panels, then you would probably want to have a gabled or a slanted roof for that matter. So, and there are two types of metal roofing here, the steel and aluminum. The It's really easy to install. Um, you can collect the rainwater easily, and it's a lot cleaner too. Instead of like asphalt, where you can get like discolored or get pieces of asphalt in the rainwater. And it's wind resistant as well. And one of the cons is it's a little bit more pricey with that as well. So then you have your asphalt shingles here, which is your traditional type of roofing here. It's low cost, also easy to install. It's pretty much at every hardware store, so you can find it pretty much anywhere. Um, but the disadvantage for this one would be it's a lot heavier, like a lot heavier than the metal roofing. So, and it's a little bit not that much wind resistant as the metal roofing type. And then the reasons to have a tiny house, well, if you're wanting to save a lot of money and instead of, finding a house or whatever, I would say this is the way to go here. With this tiny house as well, you can travel across the country. It's a lot easier to maintain, what I've been looking and reading as well. And a lot of people on this blog I was reading said it's a lot easier on their life with like stress because they know what they need and they don't have like unnecessary stuff, more or less. And also with a tiny house, we can reduce the carbon footprint as well with having solar panels, like I mentioned earlier, collecting water, using a composting toilet here, and you can grow your own food pretty much as well. So, I mean, I would honestly go off grid if I was going to have a tiny house myself as well here. So, and then the solar panels will get more in depth on this here. Um, so if you have a solar panel on top of your tiny house, you got to factor in the weight again to that as well. Um, and some tiny houses have like a thing where you can like rotate them. It's pretty cool actually. the solar panels like an arm that kind of like pushes out to maximize the, I guess, catching of the sunlight or something. So what are the pros of having a tiny house? Well, save a lot of money. You can travel, um, smaller carbon footprint as well, and less possessions. Going back to like your needs and what you really need to have. And some of the cons here are, you got to have a decent sized vehicle to pull your tiny house, depending on how big your house is. Some tiny house laws are consider it an RV, so you'll have to park it like in an RV park as well. And there's like less storage and less living and entertaining space in your house as well. So, and some of the most common tiny house laws in the bathroom, you need to at least be or have height clearance of 6 feet and 4 inches. And in the living areas, you need to have 6 feet 8 inches. And there should also be at least one emergency window to get out in case if there's an emergency as well. So with the zoning law, which zoning law is a big factor in this, some states or laws you can't buy land and build your tiny house on it, which is I find strange. So you'll have to have a secondary residential unit to have it on, which is really weird. So the cost for having a tiny house, the average person on making a tiny house would be 30,000 to 60,000, but the range can go from 8,000 up to 150,000 for a tiny house here. And just a little recap here. The tiny house is a lot cheaper than owning your standard house. Uh, Also, a tiny house and trailer can be used to travel anywhere you want to go as well, and the financial purposes as well is a lot cheaper. And you can just reduce your carbon footprint and to save the planet or whatever, how you want to say it. And if I was going to build a tiny house, this would be my design here. This is exactly how it is outside, and here's the floor plan of it. On your left-hand side, you got a loft, and then right below it, you got a full bath or kind of full bathroom with a toilet and a bathtub. Then you got your kitchen right across from it, and you kind of got a decently living and entertaining area as well. And last but not least, there's a up and coming tiny house community in the Flat Rock community as well. So, and that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go back to the pallet side of it. Tell us a little bit more how to build these pallet walls.
All right. So, where was that at? So, like here, you can have it going out anyway. Like, you describe it like with the stringer pallet, the one side of a stringer pallet have the many types of, I guess, deck one bys or deck boards or whatever they're called. Um, you can have that on the outside because that's more. I just can't talk today. That's more of structure and more places you can like screw in like the plywood to make the structure more steady. And if you're putting insulation up, you can have it like lean up against the drywall, the pallet as well, like on the inside of the pallet. But here you can see that they use it looks like the block pallet up top here, and then the stringer pallet on the bottom here. And you would just simply stand it up using little poles here to hold it up and brace it until you get it screwed down for the time being. So, yeah.
But what holds the top pallet to the lower pallet?
You can put like a some like a piece of 2x6 like running across here. I don't know if can y'all see my mouse cursor there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. You can put like a piece of like 2x6 or something running across here to make like a layer to hold it together, and you would just simply use like screws and nails to just lock it in place there. So yeah.
Okay. You also suggested using where you click on number 9 slide over there for me.
All right.
R19 in your walls. The pallets that I used on my tiny house, they were made out of 2x4s and not 2x6s, and it would be hard for R19 to be used there.
Right. Yeah. And I kept reading that problem, but sometimes like some people do is like they would take apart the back side of the pallet and put like an extra, I don't know, like an extra couple inches to fit the R19 in the walls there. So, but that's why, and a lot of people I see use the spray foam and the blow insulation as well. Because if they don't want to go through that hassle of an extra step for putting insulation on the wall, then they'll just use the spray foam or the um, blow insulation.
Seems like it'd be pretty hard to get a bat tucked into a pallet properly and not have it compressed or have voids. Concern for me about using pallets as wall structure is your external sheathing and air sealing it properly. That's why blown in insulations or sprayed in insulations seem to make a little more sense.
Right. Yes.
Go down to the bottom of your presentation where you talked about the laws. 22.
Yeah.
Where did you find this at? This is new to me.
Well, God, I forgot where I found it. I just typed in when I was looking for like I just typed in cons for tiny houses, and this was at the bottom of the list that came up for like the ceiling heights and stuff. Which before I didn't think that you would necessarily need like however feet and inches of um, height that you would need. But I can't quite remember where I found it though.
Well, one of the reasons that I asked is because my youngest son is 6'5", and he hates a shorts bathroom to take a shower in. So
Right.
also, in a tiny house, most of the laws are actually governed by DMV, DOT, rather than code. Now, when you look in the code under habitable, they have, certain criteria there, but like I say, DOT does not have any criteria whatsoever, to my knowledge, as far as size of roof or anything like that. Their criteria is it can't be more than 8 foot 3 inches wide and 14 foot tall. And depending on the weight of it is going to depend on how many axles you have. There's And most of the people that I know of that have done tiny houses, they overkill on the axle. In other words, they put 2 or 3 axles in there when they really don't need that much. You think about a transfer truck and what all it's got on there and how many wheels it's on now. It does have 2 wheels deep, but there is a certain poundage that is required on that. So go down to the next one, 23. Your zoning laws, you were questioning that. A lot of times the HOA have problems with that. So if you go out here and buy some land out in the middle of nowhere, you're pretty much going to be able to do whatever you want to. But now if you have a lot that's in a development, then the homeowners association, oh my God, one of the developments that I lived in, and I'm glad I'm gone, we literally had women that would walk around every morning with a ruler to measure how tall the grass is. I mean, that's how bad it was. I had a boat, couldn't put the boat in, you couldn't leave it out in the open. It had to be in a garage or somewhere else. If you had an RV, it could not be in the driveway overnight. So in other words, if I brought my RV over there and we were going to get ready to take a trip the next day, we would pack it and I would have to go take it and move it to somewhere else because it can't stay there overnight. In other words, even if I had Fred and Wilma come over and decide they're going to spend the night with us and they had their RV, it cannot stay on the property. And so the HOAs can be a pain in the butt. They can be in your favor at times, but I think a lot of times it goes, they take it a little bit overboard sometimes. But the size of the house, a lot of times, is dictated by the HOA. In this particular housing development, no house could be less than 2,000 square foot. So, obviously you can't get a tiny house in 2,000 square foot.
Right.
Any other questions from other folks?
Do you know if those laws are North Carolina based or any other state?
Which laws are you talking about?
Just any of them, the zoning laws or the law before about the bathroom has to be a certain height?
Well, each of the building code, again, stipulates the habitable spaces. And we go under the Southern Building Code, and then there's a Northern Building Code, Western and Northwestern and Southwestern. And most of all of the habitable rooms are already established. But again, those generally don't apply to a tiny house at all. DOT makes the laws otherwise for the height and the width of it, and that is standard. That's nationwide.
Also, would you recommend going to Lowe's or Home Depot to maybe buying one of those sheds they have there and make a tiny home out of that? Because I've always thought that'd be a good idea.
Heath, what do you say?
Heath, you work there with me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I realized that. Yeah. I mean, you can, but I mean, you're going to have to put up some insulation up as well. Some type of, if you're going to live in it, you're going to have to put some insulation up to keep from getting cold or keep the cold from coming in and stuff there, and have some source of light running in there, and have running water, maybe if it's a tiny house, some type of water system going in it.
Right.
I have to touch base on that one though, but yeah.
I know we don't have it at Lowe's, but at Home Depot, I know they have some of the bigger ones that are 2 stories.
Mm.
Even as a kid, I loved going in there and exploring them. I think I can make my own little house out of this.
Yeah.
A whole bedroom upstairs and a bathroom and kitchen and living room set downstairs. That'd be great.
Oh yeah.
As soon as you decide you want to turn that into a tiny house, and take it off skids and plumb it and hook it up to septic, you're going to run into a lot of issues with permitting that as a living space. If it stays on skids and doesn't have any utilities hooked up to it, it's just a shed. But as soon as you try to put it on utilities, it's going to get fall under the permits for a house, and they'll want it to have a real foundation to be able to be plumbed and have power.
Yeah, I'd probably imagine that.
Now, if you put it on wheels, then it becomes a DOT problem.
So then you're limited to a shed that's 8'3",
Yeah.
14 foot tall.
Still not a bad idea, especially for like homeless people.
One of the things that I've found out that, you know, this shed idea is a good idea. My wife, she's seen it and thought, hey, let's look into that. Well, I got to looking at the cost of it, and it would be a heck of a sight cheaper for me to build it myself than it would be to buy a shed already built. And, you know, so, and I could, something like a shed I could probably do in a weekend, you know, so, but just the shed, not having, you know, plumbing or finished interior or anything like that. Any other questions?
Yeah, did you look into the cost of lot fees at all? Because I know one of the big draws of tiny homes is that it's a good way to save money, but if you don't have your own land, and you're renting somewhere that costs like $800 a month as a lot fee, doesn't really add up. Also, sorry, my dogs are in the background.
Yeah, no, I should have touched up on that, but usually, like, if you don't, like you said, have land or something, you'll have to either go rent it from somebody or a RV park, which if you rent it from RV park is kind of get a little pricey over long term. So just buying some land and just paying a lump sum there and just being done with it. So.
A lot of people do work trades too. Like you can work on their land or help them with a farm or something to park your tiny home.
Yeah, that is true as well. I actually got a couple of neighbors around here down the road that has a tiny house, and they got a little, like, I guess, farms thing they work on, and it looks like they're just doing work around the farm to, like you said, stay there. So. About it.
There's another tiny home village in Mills River that I'm trying to research, find. Any other questions for Heath or comment?
Does the codes follow that of a mobile home or, well, it's obviously not modular because it's on wheels. So I guess codes have to meet just what trailer codes are, or does it have to meet full house codes?
The mobile homes fall under the code, the building code, because once they're there, the wheels generally come off. They are house. The wheels are only there for
Transportation.
just for moving it from point A to point B. It's not something that you could hook behind a truck and carry to the road. A modular is put on a trailer. It doesn't have wheels at all. It's set on a trailer and taken off a trailer.
When you're building with the pallets, do you keep the pallets together all in one piece and put them up like that, or do you take apart any of it? Like, can you use an individual piece?
What I found that they were building it like as individual pieces at first, or this other guy I was watching or reading about, he made like the wall. Like if we go, where's this slide at? Like if we go to this slide here, you can see like they put some like a looks like a 2x6 running across here and connected all the pallets together up top. Then it looks like they got a piece running right here that's connecting these pallets together right here. I mean, you can do it either way. It looks like, but probably the most efficient way to get your walls done first would probably be doing making like the whole wall piece first, like how these guys are doing here.
Let me share with you my little experience here. First, this is I don't know how you pronounce this, Oconee Bell Tiny Home Village. That's the one I was telling you about in Mills River. One of my former students actually finished. He just recently finished his tiny house and moved it to here. Let me find.
Is that on the main drag in Mills River?
What's that?
Is it like off the main highway or you have to go a ways
I
away?
couldn't tell you. I don't know. That's where he put it, and that's all I can tell you. So he built his. He went, bought a frame. Built it all just like he would be a house. So he is a window renovator. He buys old windows. Actually, they pretty much probably give them to him. And then he renovates the windows and they reuse them. So, he's pretty good at it. This is what he done. And he now lives in this tiny home community here in Mills River. Now, exactly where it is, I couldn't tell you. I don't know exactly. But so you can, basically what I'm understanding is you go and you rent a lot, pretty much like a trailer park, but it's nicer than a trailer park. So if that makes any sense. Like mine.
I feel like I've seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
Is there certain regulations that you have to have in order to get power?
Well, if you can get a temporary, here's the thing. That's a very good question. It depends on where you're at, for number one. Now, most power companies are not going to run power 200 or 300 or 400 feet if they know that you're going to be there temporarily, part-time, like as a hunting cabin or something. So if you want temporary power, the best thing for you to do is, plan to build a house, have you some plans, and you get your temporary put in. Now, you can, if you plan to build that house, in the next 1,000 years, that's fine. It doesn't matter. But if they get word that it's going to be a tiny house, RV, temporary situation, they are going to probably charge you out the hind leg to run power to a temporary pole. Okay, so tiny houses have to be hooked up to temporary, if you hook it up if you permanently hook it up like you would be a house, your tiny house is no longer a tiny house, where it's a tiny house, but it's not a tiny house on wheels. It now falls under those habitable spaces. All right, so there's a very fine line there. So one of the reasons that folks want to, they want to do this tiny house thing is they want to be in charge of their own life, and they don't want the government telling them how big the living room has to be or the bedroom has to be, or stuff like that. So, and that's what happens in a home. So when you have a habitable home, there are certain guidelines that say, okay, this is habitable. And when you go into the building code, there's just tons and tons of stuff that you can look up in the building planning section on habitable, and ceiling heights, door widths, all of that come into play there. And so right here, chapter 3 in building planning, go in there and just do a search for habitable. And so there's, you know, required heating, minimum areas, habitable rooms shall have a floor area of not less than 70 square feet. Well, let's see, my tiny house is inside, it is roughly, how big is my daggum tiny house? 6 by 12, 6 times 12, 72. So, you know, mine just barely falls under this 70 square feet. All right. Well, a bedroom, so a habitable room should not be less than 7 feet in any horizontal dimension. Well, guess what? You know, I only have 7 feet in one direction. You know, so when you go into heights, 7 feet for a ceiling height. Bathrooms not less than 6'8". That's probably, well, that's still not what that other one was. But so, you know, if I want to live in a rock, I want to be able to live under a rock. So, you know, so when we get into this tiny house movement here, it's totally, it's a set of mind, you know, it's just, you know, it's a different thing. That was the route that we wanted to go originally, but our house was just a little smaller than what, you know, we anticipated. So like in this, this is the beginning of our tiny house. And so the way we ended up doing our, you know, attaching these two is basically you can see that this one here is torn apart. And what I've done was I took these pieces of wood out of here and I use them here inside. So they are scabbed on here to, you know, basically halfway through each one of those. So each one of these has one. So to make up this wall here, instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it actually took 9 pallets to make this one wall, because I took it apart and used parts and pieces for it, if that makes any sense. So, you know, it's got to be structural enough to go down the road. I mean, you know, I've got wheels on it. So different tiny house builders have got to be, you know, different ways, in other words, of building a tiny house is you got to take that into consideration. I did go and put a you know, a standard 2-by across the whole thing, around the whole thing, to tie the top together. The bottom is held together by the floor. And I'll tell you, you know, it goes back to what Danny was saying, trying to put bad insulation in there didn't work at all. So you cannot shove bad insulation into these walls, I promise you. So what I ended up doing was blowing it in. I did all my, I mean, doing the plumbing alone. I mean, you know, not only do you have to deal with your studs, you've got to deal with these pieces here, and it's not fun at all. And you know, it takes a ton of planning. Wiring is even difficult, for God's sake. I mean, you know, because you're having to deal with all of these 1-bys that are going around through here. I was trying to find a video of my home. There it is. So I did compact, dense packed cellulose in here. So basically, I made myself a homemade blower. I took a leaf blower and that has the vacuum setting on it, and I took the blower portion of that cleans out the gutters, and I made my own. I just opened up a pack, throwed it in the floor, and started sweeping it into the vac, and it started shoving it in there. I basically had to go through here with plastic to hold it in place, but after I was done, as I was putting my interior finish boards on, then I was going through here and just cutting this like crazy, just putting slits in it here and there so that it would not hold moisture and condensation and stuff. But I tell you what, I mean, I could make one hole here, and as you can see, I blowed the whole wall all the way across. So I didn't have, I just made a few puncture holes in it to blow this stuff in. But like I say, once I got it blown in and I started putting my finish on it, then it was very important for me to go through here and make a bunch of slits in there so I don't have any condensation building up in there. And this basically, it stops blowing when you get about 3.5 pounds per square foot. So that's dense packed insulation. So what I mean is, it's packed in here. You can see some of the plastic where it's bulging out there. Most of this is bulging because I was blowing it, but when I got ready to put my wallboard on, it still was bulging, and that compacted it even better. When I did my office, I did the same thing here. I used the same contraption, and necessity is the mother of invention. I did use batt insulation on the ceiling. It does make a mess, and so I also used pallets to make my door. This is the front door to it. I took apart a bunch of pallets. I took me a 1/2-inch piece of plywood and a renovated or a salvaged piece of insulated tempered glass and made myself a door. It looks fairly nice. I also have under floor radiant floor heating, and I even stuck Bernie Sanders on the front porch to make it complete. So this is pretty much the finished product. I've still got to put this door up. I haven't got this door up. This is a queen size bed, by the way, and you can see that we don't have a whole lot of height right here. It's climbing. It's crawl space basically, and that would not pass as a habitable room in the building code. Everything that we've put in here is pretty much either discontinued or salvaged. All the wood was salvaged. I got all of the wood for free, and it just was muddy, and I had to do a lot. I spent probably more in sandpaper than I did on wood. Dining room table, down and up. This is ceramic tile that looks like marble, discontinued. And so you can do a lot of things with it.
On the insulation, is that the same kind you would blow in an attic?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cellulose insulation.
How do you keep it from clumping?
Oh, it don't clump. You run it through that blower, and it grinds it up as it goes through, because it goes through a fan basically, and it'll shred it in a heartbeat.
Have you slept in your tiny home yet?
I have.
How is it crawling into that tiny?
It's a little claustrophobic, but it's cool. The windows are right there beside of us, so it wasn't a big issue. Having sex was a different story, so we won't even get into that. So we actually even Leanne wanted to build a tiny house at the tiny house. So this was our Christmas decoration for this year. So we made a little model of a tiny house, and she found an old pickup truck. So here's the shower. We're gonna lose the shower. This was my youngest son. I put this specifically on the ceiling with a little handle to turn it on and off. So basically you turn this on and you've got both of these. And but son of a gun, I mean, from the time I started this planning until to this point, he actually grown another inch. So he still has to bend down to get in here because this is 6'8". The bottom of this is 6'8". And so I'm losing a little bit there. Like I say, he's 6'5", and he can, if he stands up straight, his head is touching that shower there.
Where do you have your plumbing run out to? Is it just run out on the ground right now, or
The what now?
your plumbing for like whenever you're taking a shower stuff for your water to run out to? Where does
It will. We don't have any tanks. We decided not to go the tank method. So anytime we go camping, we've got a little catch basin thing that if you've ever been to a campground, you've seen these RVs carrying, it's got this little tank that has little wheels on it. I was trying to see if I can find a picture of it, but so we just, it's basically just, we set it up kind of like an RV. So if we go to a campground with this thing, it's got to be hooked up to their septic system, or if you were to set it up in a permanent area. So one fellow that I know of has offered me $20,000 for it. I probably got 2,000 in it. He's offered me $20,000. He wants to turn it into a Airbnb on some property that he has up near the gorge. And I can't. If he does that, he's gonna build a deck around it permanently, and by doing so, he's going to have to put in a septic tank. He doesn't have to put in a leach field because he can just put in the septic tank and then have the septic tank pumped ever so often when it fills up. I cannot find a picture of that tube coming off of the side of it. Not off the bat, but it's not even in this picture. It's right there, but I don't have it in this picture. I don't have a picture of that at all. But let me just show you what it is. RV.
Have you thought about adding solar panels later?
Nah, I'm gonna sell it before that. This is what I'm talking about here. It's got that on the end of it, much like an RV does.
Was that a pump?
What's that?
In the previous photo, was that a pump?
Yes.
Okay.
That is what appears to be, that is a sink disposal.
Oh, garbage disposal.
Yeah.
I thought it looked familiar.
So it's taking all the waste and turning it into this. It's pushing it out through there. So all of your poop and your paper gets all ground up, and they just turn it into water. But so yeah. Any questions?